This episode is proudly supported by OpenTable.
Nearly 1/3 of diners are booking same day. So they're making those decisions on the spot. And 10% are making their bookings within just a few hours. And so it's why it's so important to have booking software like OpenTable, which allows your diners to discover you. And so when restaurants are on platforms like OpenTable, they're much more likely to be discovered. We help diners to connect to restaurants. Ultimately, having technology, using technology, helps you to reattach to those diners.
Experience the power of OpenTable. For an exclusive offer, visit restaurant.opentable.com.au/DITW.
The actual, agricultural resources of the Liverpool Plains are magnificent.
I would have to say it is one of the most blessed agricultural areas I have ever seen.
All that is undone at one stroke of a pen by a minister that says, let's put a gas field here.
It's the fear of the unknown, and no matter how many studies they do on it, they can't guarantee that if it leaks, that it will not destroy.
We feel like we're fighting it on behalf of everyone.
Pretty much the whole of Australia loses out if the soil and the things are carried on here that shouldn't be, because there's certain areas that shouldn't be mucked with.
Just about everything we do at Dirty Linen and across the whole Deep in the Weeds food podcast network rests on farming. Without productive farmers, we don't have restaurants. We don't have those resonant, connected stories of cuisine and culture that we love so much and that we know you appreciate too. And fundamentally, without farmers, we don't eat. It's basic. We also know that we need to cease coal and gas mining because of the emissions they create. The science is unequivocal. The catastrophic climate risks are too great. The move to net zero makes allowances for legacy mining, but it's clear that any new coal or gas extraction tips into dangerous territory. Given all this, we're keeping a close eye on the Liverpool Plains and the gas mining exploration licences held by energy giant Santos. Join us all week as we talk to people in the region who are likely to be impacted by any mining activities and are mobilising against them. It's an interesting coalition of farmers, bakers, townspeople, traditional owners, and long-time journalists and community members. What becomes clear in these conversations is that this is a local fight with broader implications. If you eat, if you live on Earth, this fight matters. By the way, we've reached out to Santos for comment. We look forward to a response. We continue our Fighting for the Liverpool Plains series in today's chat with sourdough baker Renee Neale. Renee runs Reverence Sourdough in Gunnedah. It's bread made with time and love. She also has a close association with whole grain milling and can speak with passion and authority about the importance of Liverpool Plains grain to the Australian baking community. So Renee, so good to have a chance to chat to you. Tell us a bit about yourself and what you do.
Thank you. Look, I'm just, overwhelmed to talk with you, Dani. So I'm from Gunnedah and I have my own business here called Reverence Sourdough. It's a sourdough business, as it sounds. I've just opened up a shop in just off the main street in Gunnedah in the last 3 months, but I've been making and baking sourdough for the last 12 years. And I guess it's something that started a long time ago. My ex-husband and I own Whole Grain Milling Company, which is a certified organic and certified sustainable flour mill. We sell chemical-free flour. And it was through working there, after 7 years that I formed some great relationships with some of the artisan bakers that we'd go and market to. And I just get tidbits from them and, they'd say, this works better with this flour. And it was basically from my understanding of milling the flour and then from talking to these artisan bakers that I started making my own sourdough. At first, it was just for our own family use. We also had a son that was what we thought gluten intolerant. We'd go and, before I'd bake sourdough, we'd go and buy it from Sonoma and Burke Street in Sydney and bring it back to little old Gunnedah, and I'd trying to feed him on this frozen product, and I was like, there's got to be a better way. So yeah, that's when I started making it, and it just pretty much exploded from there. I went from making it for our own family to making it and giving it away to family and friends. And then just through a cafe in town at the time, which is no longer open, called Jack and Jill's, I started to sell it. 5 loaves a week to start off with, which is, now grown up to having 7 cafes who buy from me and the public customers. And, I'm up to sort of 600-700 loaves of sourdough a week and lots and lots of pastry.
I love it. Sourdough is certainly one of those things that really hooks people in. It's sort of like there's never-ending conversation with the product. Is that right?
Yeah, look, it's just such a beautiful product to work with in every way. And I think, my actual name of my business, Reverence, means to be admired, to be adored. And I guess part of my story is a time when the only thing I could do was make sourdough, and sourdough was actually my therapy. It's just, in every way, the process of making sourdough is you've got to do it slowly, you've got to give it time, and, in my case, I had to give it love, and it grows on you. I love the process of it, and it's so, everyone, and people want to talk to you about it. They want to talk to you about how it's made, especially with the history of the chemical-free flour, and there's just so many good things with sourdough.
I mean, whole grain milling is really an institution or a legend. It is revered, speaking of reverence, among sourdough bakers, particularly in Australia, and such a big part of the story of many independent and artisan sourdough bakeries in the country who really see the value in that type of farming. Can you talk about your relationship with wheat and, milling and how it's sort of, I don't know, what sort of journey that relationship has taken you on?
No, definitely. I think, I feel, actually get goosebumpy talking about this. I feel very privileged that's how my journey, went. I married Craig Neale and we had whole grain milling, and I started working in the flour mill. But previous to working in the flour mill, we also had a family property, which we certified organic, which is a fairly long process to go through if you're conventional, but we did it, ticked all the boxes, did the right things, and so we would also be able to grow our own wheat. So I was so lucky to, number one, you have your grain on farm, which you're watching it grow, but you also, coming off the farm, I understand the hardships, the droughts. Like at one point there, I think we had 4 to 5 years of drought on our property where we didn't get a crop, and that was just heartbreaking because you just, pouring money into an organic certification that you haven't got anything off yet. But through perseverance, we did get some beautiful crops off. And then I was, lucky then to watch the process at the mill. And I think, I can only, view it in the way I do and understand it the way I do. I totally love and adore the organic and the sustainable certification that we have at the mill, because I know the hardship that every family has gone into to grow the grain, and the hardship that our family went through to mill the grain, especially in the early days when sustainable wasn't a very well-known certification. And I think also, the toll it takes on your own family sometimes. The mill, Craig is a very hard worker, and he would work 24/7 a lot of times. And his parents as well, their heart and their soul are definitely in that mill. And it really is like family owned and family loved. It's, like revered, like you said, definitely.
And back to the bakery, Renee, can you talk about how it's been received in the local community?
Look, I really love local. I completely support local, and I think that's what that's where my drive and inspiration comes from. I've been so lucky to be supported from the local community and the wider community right from the word go. It was through Tara Spence, who owned a local cafe. She wanted to start selling my sourdough in the beginning, and I obtained my food safety supervisor certificate. And it was from there that I went from, selling 5 to 6 loaves to the public a week to what I am now. And I can say I get nothing but support from my local community. I think also because the mill is based locally, and some of the grain does come from locally as well. So they get to know the story behind the product. It's not just a product that's slapped on a shelf and, they're just, oh, this is what I want. They know myself, they know the mill. So, sometimes they might know the grower, and they know that it's, goodness from woe to go.
And I mean, how do you feel about local food and this connection? Is that something that you're always talking about? Do you feel embedded in it? Like, where does it sit with you?
Yeah, look, absolutely. I think because my roots are from farming. My father was a grazier. We also did some cropping. So I have a great notion of, it's not just you go to the supermarket and you buy meat and that's how meat is made. I've been to abattoirs as a child and seen meat, watched our own cattle produce, and then been to the abattoirs, which is the complete other side of the story. So now it's great to be on the cropping side of it, and you see the end result of the grain and the flour, which is my sourdough. I just feel like people really want to know where their food comes from. I think there's like a power in it. It feels great to know that what's gone into your product. Like these days, there's so many things you can buy that we have, you look and you think, well, what's in this, or what's this number, or where has this come from? Is this the truth? And when it comes to a local product, most of the time it is what it says it is. And if you know the people, especially if you know they have integrity, and then you can feel good about eating it. And I just think that's what people want. They love a story. They love to know where it comes from. I know myself for one, definitely. This is, me.
And beyond that sort of that romance and that desire to know, how important do you think it is? Do you think people see it's beyond this nice feeling and this sort of cozy closeness to food? Do you think it matters?
Look, I definitely think it matters. I'm definitely not against, larger corporations and mass production of things, but I think there's something, and this is getting into it, there's a lot here, but it's also to do with, sustaining your own community and business relationships and supporting small communities, or not small communities, even just, communities in general, because you have a look at this region where we are located. There are so many great small businesses and, so many artisan food producers as well out here that have so much to showcase, so much to give to the world. And I think sometimes it just, I know for me probably it was a confidence thing in the beginning that I really had to step outside the box. And yes, I did have, something to show people, and my product was worthy enough. So I think definitely if more people, who have something to showcase and to show in their local communities did it, it is a great thing as well.
And tell us about the region, the town where you are and, where it sits in the food bowl. Yeah, so we are surrounded by, the beautiful Black Breezer Plains. I guess I could tell you my little thoughts on where I live because I've been able to travel around the whole of Australia. So I've been inland Australia and I've been right around Australia. And coming from a farming based family, I travelled around Australia hoping to see what we had at home here. I thought, well, I wonder if there's something better than Gunnedah. I wonder if there's some farming. I've always loved, country and land. And I wonder if there's something better than here. I wonder if I'll find something and I won't come home. Basically, I came home all those years ago because our community and the country and the land here is so rich. We are so lucky to have what we have here and so blessed. And I think that's why
people in this region can produce, cropping, cattle. Everything that we do is because the soil and the country is so rich, and it's just, we're very lucky to have it.
I mean, soil is everything, it underpins all food, I guess apart from seafood. But tell us about it. Tell us about this soil, like what makes it so good?
Yeah, so look, and this is probably where we can come back to our organic and our sustainable certifications as well with the growing process of the grain. With the sustainable process, certain things have to be added into the soil, certain nutrients, in order to obtain a good crop. If you just throw some seeds on hard soil, you're not going to get a bountiful crop. And I think this is where we're so lucky here. Our soil, especially across the Breeza Plain, it's black, it's rich, and it grows some of the best crops in Australia anywhere. So to jeopardise that is just crazy. We're very lucky to have this in this region, and I believe this is some of the best country in Australia, what we have here.
So Renee, you mentioned jeopardy. Like, let's talk about that. When did you become aware of a risk to the food bowl? Basically,
I think there were, people would talk around town, but then there was also they put signs up on the Breeza Plain, mind your food bowl and things like that. Look, also our close family connections with farmers in the town as well. They started talking about the mines and that, buying areas out on the Breeza Plain, and it was very hard to understand at first as to why it was allowed. And I just think, especially the Breeza Plain, it's a magnificent area. That's probably, it was just through family contacts and that, talking years ago about how it was starting.
And what's happened since then? Like what's been the process of, whether there's been consultation or meetings, and, how have you started to, mobilise around this issue?
Yeah, look, I think, I won't lie, at first I was very scared about what was going to happen, especially to the beautiful Breeza Plain. I was, after that, some work did stop out there, and I was, felt a little bit more comfortable about it. But I think, I won't lie, because I do work 24/7, I'm not read up on this as well as I should be. But I just think they shouldn't mind the Breeza Plain and the coal seam gas. I have no problem with them doing it out in the Pilliga and out further west where the country isn't as rich, but definitely around this region, is a definite issue.
What do you think, what would the potential impacts be? What do you think the potential impacts would be if it went ahead on the Breeza Plain?
So basically, you've got that loss of all that farming, that magnificent farming country, which isn't only going to affect us as a community. It's not only going to affect them, 100 or 200 kilometres away. It's going to affect the whole of New South Wales. The grain that's produced here and the cattle that are produced here go all over New South Wales and sometimes into other states. So it's not only, our local community that loses out, it's pretty much the whole of Australia loses out if the soil and that things are carried on here that shouldn't be, because there's certain areas that shouldn't be mucked with.
It's rural communities, pull together in incredible ways in times of crisis. We've seen that again and again with droughts and floods and, everything that's thrown your way. But sometimes it's harder to gather around things that get a bit political. What sort of community do you feel part of? Like, do you feel like there's a lot of solidarity? Are there a lot of different opinions?
Look, I think, Gunnedah we do have a lot of miners based here in Gunnedah. So I will say there is a definite division in the community. A large amount of the community is farming based, but then you also have a large amount of money that comes into the community through mining. So there definitely is a division. But I think, the people on each side's are pretty passionate, but the people, against the coal seam gas are very passionate. They're from farming families and they have a definite vision of what they want to happen, and I think we do rally behind them when it comes to that.
Would you say this issue's shaken the local community?
Yes, definitely. In the last couple of years, absolutely. It's something you see about in the news or you read about often, and it's something that you do talk about often with family and friends or in the business community, because it affects us all, and we know it will affect us all if, they're allowed to carry out what they carry out.
It's interesting. To me, it seems like we're all having to grapple with this short-term thinking as we transition away from fossil fuels and towards greener power. I think even the big emitters, will admit that these are transitional fuels, as we move away from, just taking stuff out of the ground that's been there for millions of years and burning it up. I don't know. It's so hard to wrestle with because it seems clear that that we just don't need to do this, but the profit motive is so strong in the meantime.
Yeah, look, definitely. I think it's that, short term. It's like a short-term payback that we get. I think it's very hard to sometimes look in the long term, and you can be very slap happy and just be all short-term based. But I know now from having children, and, I want them to prosper, and I want their food bowl to be here in hundreds of years to come. I just think you do need to look outside the box, and we do need to think more long term. There are other areas in Australia that these things can happen in. This is a magnificent food growing area that shouldn't be mucked with.
I guess, with your engagement with soil and, the richness of the soil there and the value in that, I mean, soil is also something that doesn't just happen. Like, it takes a long time to build and grow and nurture.
Look, absolutely. And with getting a, certified organic or a certified sustainable certification, it's sort of 3 to 4 years in the making to go from a conventional farmer who's used chemicals to switch over to these certifications. And that's basically, with the sustainable certification, you're building the soil up in that time. So that's what it's really based around, is not just take, which is, what I think sometimes as humans we are really good at, but to give back, and in reward for giving back, you reap so much more.
Yeah, I guess, it makes me think of humans as these, hungry animals that, eat something, eat the cupboard bare, in one direction, then turn around and, look for the next, bag of bounty. But I think once it's gone, right?
Yeah, look, I think definitely how we're talking about, producing local food and things like that. I think I think in some areas that brings that to an end, because if you know where your food comes from and that, and it's a sustainable process, then you can feel so much more comfortable in eating it or enjoying it. For myself, I use whole grain flour. I don't know if I could use any other flour. I never have, because I love our flour so much, and I know there's a good standard behind it, and I know it doesn't use and abuse the soil. I don't think you have to make great leaps and bounds. I think if you just make small steps as yourself in your choices, then we aren't the greedy, hungry people sometimes that we're looked upon to be.
What other sorts of choices could people make? Like, what is open to us to change?
I just think, in your everyday life, make conscious decisions with exactly where your food comes from, where your waste goes, even things like how you get to work, like all those really basic things. And I think a lot of it, and I'm probably getting really in depth here, I think there's also a lot of mental health behind it as well, because I know from what I do and my strong family base I have, and the strong family community that I supply. It's just, there's a connection, you get to it, and it's definitely attached to mental health as well. So anyway, but I won't bring that into it. But yeah.
Well, I think it's great to bring it into it, because I think it is so fundamental, and we know that strong connections are, foster better mental health, and that people that feel connected to community are going to be better supported. So yeah, I think it's all intertwined and very important. I think having a connection to where your food comes from. I mean, food is something you put into your body. It's pretty intimate. It's pretty important, and to be able to trust it in a deep way, I think definitely makes you feel better.
Yeah, definitely, and that's my thought behind it as well. Especially out in these, out in the more remote communities, and that mental health is so huge. And I think to be able to, stay connected and just feel good about what you eat and what you do on a day-to-day basis really pays off and really helps. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, speaking about feeling good, let's just talk a little bit about the joys of sourdough and just that the connection that you have to have when you're making it. Can you talk about, what you love about what you do?
So I honestly love to go to work, and I think hopefully a lot of people can say that, but I don't know if many can. I'm so blessed every day to actually want to wake up at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning like I do and go in and just be creative. I think I really love the process of sourdough. It's slow, you can't rush it. And I think that has actually taught me a lot in my life as well. I've put it through a lot of other areas of my life that, you can't rush things. You just have to learn to take it slow and watch the process. I love working with our flour. And I love, I do a really nice Khorasan loaf and a nice malted barley and rye. And I get so much, I think probably adrenaline even when I bake the sourdough and I see how it looks. And you have days where it's, so sourdough is so temperamental. It changes, the way you make it changes with the environment and with the weather. So today out here, it's actually a fair bit colder to what it was even on the weekend. So I actually slightly changed my process today. Everything had to sit on the bench a bit longer. So it's something that's extremely challenging. It changes from day to day, month to month. But I think it's that challenge and that, risk of what's going to come out that also keeps me involved and keeps me inspired every day.
I love it. Renee, what's your favourite way to eat sourdough?
Honestly, even though I bake it every day, I love to let it sit on my bench and it to get 2 to 3 days old, where I'm literally cutting it off like it's a cracker, eating it with full fat butter. And that's just it. I just love crispy sourdough with some beautiful butter or olive oil, and just to enjoy the flavours that way. It is honestly, and it's not just because I make it, it is one of my most favourite things to devour.
Oh, so much respect for that. I absolutely love that. And yeah, the more butter, the better.
Absolutely. The full fat butter is very important.
Yeah, definitely. What even is not full fat butter? Is there low fat butter? I mean, why?
Yeah, so, like all this salt reduced and, I just, there's nothing like full fat butter. I think once again, it's my farming background that leads me to the days of my father milking the Guernsey cow, and, we're eating the butter from, make butter and the cream and the milk, and it was all so rich, but it's the flavour in it that when you start taking all that away, it's just not the same.
No, it's sustaining when it's, beautiful, full fat and natural. Renee, such a pleasure to catch up with you and, just hear how anchored you are in community and in the importance of what you do. Thank you so much for taking the time to have a chat.
No worries. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtylinen@deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta @dirtylinen podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.